start the program with an opening prayer by Reverend Okudzeto, the University Chaplain. Let's welcome him.
Good morning. Please shall we rise for a word of prayer. Shall we pray? Our Heavenly Father, we thank you this morning. Thank you for the gift of life. Thank you for making it possible for us to assemble here to learn through this program. We ask in the name of Jesus that you take the lead, Holy Spirit. Lead us through this program. At the end of it all, we'll give you praise. We thank you. We commit all the speakers to your mighty hand care, Lord. We ask that you speak through them. Every information we need to know, use them to deliver to your name. In Jesus' mighty name we have prayed. Amen.
Amen. We are here for a good cause. Good governance. If they say that it's good governance, definitely there's a bad part, right? Today we are going to talk about everything governance. How can we make improvements to the governance system and how can we sustain it? Our topic for today is sustainability and improvement of governance systems in Ghana. And you will agree with me that governance underpins everything, every sector of our economy, in the corporate world, in our country as a whole. It is important that the right structures, the policies that enables a good economy, a good corporate organization is put in place. And we have brought the capable people to talk to us about it. We would call on Dr. Mary Siao, our director for the Institute of Work, Employment and Society at the University of Professional Studies, to tell us why we have gathered here. So let's welcome Dr. Siao.
Good morning, everyone. I know the provost is on the way coming, so I will welcome the Vice Chancellor, invited guests, and our speakers, Mr. Samuel Okudzeto and Ms. Jemima Oware, faculty members present, students, friends from the media, all protocols observed. I wish to welcome all and sundry to this landmark event, a seminar on sustainability and improvement of governance systems in Ghana. The emerging concept of sustainability, as we are all aware, is a priority for both government and non-governmental organizations across the world. It's therefore important that as we've gathered here this morning to consider this topic, it will help us to understand the economic and the social, political welfare of our dear country and other countries. It also evolves within the context of various local settings, as we can all understand, from the top to the lowest level of governance. This topic is very important because it satisfies every generation. Our generation, it is important. In the future generation, it will also be relevant. So as we meet here to consider how we can sustain governance systems in Ghana, I think we are doing the right thing and our eminent speakers will help us understand this topic very well. You all agree with me that the governance systems in Ghana can be described as democratic, and with all the political parties and the media, the judicial systems and the history that we've had over the years, changing one government to another, if we come down to various levels, we have leadership changing from one to another. It tells us that we have done something. But as to whether that is sustainable, that is what we are going to discuss this morning. And so this seminar is important in the sense that it will help us understand how governance changes from one to another and how we in our generation can sustain such things. Let me remind you of how some banks and other organizations have, let me put it in quote, collapsed. I hope we will understand all these through our seminar this morning. So as I resume my seat, I want to thank all of you for participating in this seminar. And I want to extend special welcome to our speakers. I know they will do justice to the topic. So I want to invite all of you to pay attention to them as we start the program. Thank you all.
Thank you. To give us a welcome address is the Pro Vice Chancellor of the University of Professional Studies, Accra. And let's welcome Professor John Kweku Mauto.
On behalf of the Vice Chancellor, let me welcome our distinguished speakers, members of the university, the hard-working Director of IPS, Director of IWES, I always call him Senior, the President of the Global Alumni Association of UPSA, where I am a member and also an alma mater. Friends from the media, invited guests, students, ladies and gentlemen, indeed, all protocols are duly observed. I have the singular honor to once again welcome you all to UPSA for the stakeholders seminar on this important topic, sustainability and improvement of corporate governance systems in Ghana. Indeed, I am more elated about the distinguished speakers who have been chosen to address the special subject matter, and one of whom I have been listening since I was a young man growing up. And from afar, I call him Uncle Sam. Little did I know that he's a very good tennis player as well. Because I saw him in one of the tennis courts some years back. We have a very great speaker, Senior Samuel Okudzeto, the senior partner of Sam Okudzeto Chambers, and Mrs. Jemima Oware, the Registrar of Companies, Office of the Registrar of Companies, ORS. Indeed, as a university, we pride ourselves in providing a platform for thought leaders to share their in-depth knowledge in issues and also to make positive impact on society. The importance of corporate governance to businesses, institutions, and companies in every economy cannot be overemphasized for the sustainability and development of these institutions. Good corporate governance is a prerequisite for sustainable development, and the foundation and the manner in which businesses and countries are governed are crucial to a country's economic development. Indeed, this means that resources are utilized efficiently and effectively and optimally, and also the fair access to resources, better employment opportunities, and the opportunity of developing in a sustainable manner. Good corporate governance is also crucial for the effectiveness of public institutions, especially to ensure that there's better governance with effective structures and policies required for sustainable development. Transparency, accountability, and systems, as well as active participation of citizens, is also eminent in corporate governance. In fact, it calls for the rule of law, strong institutions, and the fight against corruption. The fight against corruption. Ghana has been one of the few recognized countries and also described as a beacon of stability and democracy in Africa. But the question always remains, how are we doing in the area of sustainable corporate governance? Proper regulatory framework and enforcement mechanisms are crucial to promote good governance and good practices. We must continue to evolve, innovate, and improve the governance system in Ghana for sustainability. And to achieve sustainability, we must foster an environment that encourages responsible and ethical practices across all sectors. It also requires that we adopt policies that prioritize social equity and inclusivity, ensuring that no one is left behind. Indeed, once again, to achieve all these, there is a need for an efficient, accountable governance system. Students, invited guests, it is my hope that at the end of this semester, this seminar, I'm a semester person, so sometimes you are always working on semester activities. Therefore, you sometimes will see that instead of pronouncing seminar, you end up using semester as a synonym, but it is not. We would have acquired knowledge of the sustainability and improvement of governance systems in Ghana. I am also certain that today's seminar will also educate us on the significance and delivery of corporate governance, as well as the importance of corporate governance structures in organizations. I wish you all the best in your deliberations, and I believe you come up with strategies to improve our corporate governance systems in Ghana. Indeed, once again, on behalf of the Vice Chancellor, Professor Okudzeto Amate, I welcome you to the campus of the University of Professional Studies, Accra. Just relax and enjoy this seminar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you. I believe Prof. Mauto has set the stage for me to introduce the first speaker. and please be patient with me. Our first speaker is the founder and senior partner of Sam Okudzeto Chambers. Sam is a stalwart in the Ghanaian and international law arena. He has over 50 years of experience in the legal field, beginning with a law degree from King's College, London University. Sam was called to the English bar at Inner Temple in 1963. I believe most of us were not born. And in the same year, he was called to the Ghana bar. In a long and illustrious career, Sam has picked up a few credentials for himself, some of which are Corporation of Secretaries. I won't list them all because we won't leave today if I decide to. College of Europe Diploma of Advanced European Studies 1963, Fellow of the Chartered Institute of Secretaries and Administrators 1972, he's a Notary Public 1975, and a Senior Advocate of Ghana. He's a member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitration since 1999. Sam is a member of the International Bar Association and the Commonwealth Lawyers Association. He is the past president of the Ghana Bar Association and the president of the Chartered Institute of Secretaries and Administration, as well as the Association of Recognized Professional Bodies. Do I need to go on? He's also a member of the management board of the International Bar Association and was the chairman of the Credentials Committee. In 2005, Mr. Okudzeto was honored by the American Bar Association, rightfully so, when he was elected as the International Fellow of the American Bar Foundation. The International Bar Association also honored him as an honorary life member of the association. He's a Rotarian and served on the board of Rotary International, where he was the chairman of the executive committee. Mr. Okudzeto was also the trustee vice chair of the Rotary Foundation. Mr. Okudzeto has also served his country, we all know that, don't we? In many capacities, including membership of the Constituent Assembly that drafted the 1969 Constitution. He's also a member of the Parliament from 1969 to 1962. He served as the chairman of the Ghana-Togo Border Demarcation Commission, and he was the chairman of the Accra Sports Stadium Disaster Commission. He is currently a member of the Council of State. He has been a focal person for the Governance Institute in Ghana. So we have chosen a very distinguished speaker to speak on the subject matter. Let us together put our hands together and welcome our first speaker, Mr. Sam Okudzeto.
Oh, please. Pro Vice Chancellor, Registrar of Companies. I think that's the longest serving Registrar of Companies. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to be at IPUS or UPS, UPS, because the reason why I always say IPS was the fact that some of you may not know I was actually on the board of the IPSC. And they have forgotten that one. Well, the topic we are asked to examine is very broad and very complex. And I must not lie and say that we are going to get out of here having acquired all the knowledge that there is to it. So I believe that the university is simply trying to whet your appetite so that you desire to do what? To know more on the subject. Because the subject itself is so important and vital. The concept itself of corporate governance is a new phenomenon. In fact, it started at 2002 because of what happened both in America and Britain when many corporations collapsed. The economy of the world was in shambles. And it arose because of the mismanagement of just a handful of companies, and then the others just followed. They all started to crush one after the other. And so the question about corporate governance arose because it was realized that the institutions were allowed to flourish because they bring out prospectus, have sounding, showing the kind of things that they do, and you are enticed to go and do what? To invest, is that not it? Because all of us want money, isn't it? And the Ghanaians like money so much that even our pastors also have got married to it. And so the case in point, as I was saying, was called Enron. And I will read to you what the person who was in charge of Enron, or who is the CEO, you call them, Chief Executive Officer. I think, Mr. Oware, I think the word managing director has vanished from our vocabulary, isn't it? It has vanished. Formerly, in the English language, we used to say the person is the managing director. Now he says the chief executive officer. And then the vice chancellor is also the chief executive officer. And that's the deputy chief executive officer. And the man who is running the kiosk in the corner is also the chief executive officer of our establishment. And so this is what he said. He said, a strong, independent, and knowledgeable board can make a significant difference to the performance of any company. Our corporate governance guidelines emphasize the qualities of strength of character, an inquiring and independent mind, practical wisdom, and mature judgment. It is no accident that we put strength of character in quote first. Like any successful company, we must have directors who start with what is right, who do not have hidden agendas, and who strive to make judgments about what is best for the company and not about what is best for themselves or some other constituencies. We look first and foremost for principle-centered leaders that include principle-centered directors. The second thing is to look for independent and inquiring minds. We are always thinking about the company's business and what we are trying to do. We want board members whose active participation improves the quality of our decisions. Finally, we look for individuals who have mature judgment, individuals who are thoughtful and rigorous in what they say and decide. They should be people whom we consider as directors and management of the company. The responsibility of our board can mentor CEOs and other senior managers. The responsibility of our board is to ensure that legal and ethical conduct by the company and by everyone in the company. The requirement does not exist by haphazard insistence. It is most important that experts than the board members. What a CEO really expects from a board is good advice and counsel, both of which will make the company stronger and more successful. Support for the investments and disclosure that serve the interests of the company and its shareholders. This is what the CEO said. Now, who is this CEO who was saying all this? He was called Kenneth Lay. He was the CEO of Enron. Now, but the analyst said the board looks good on paper. The code of ethics is similarly very impressive. The company got high marks from just about everyone for the best corporate governance practices. Now, on the board was the former dean of the Stanford Business School, who was the chairman of the board and also of the audit committee. Another director was formerly a member of the British House of Lords and House of Commons and a minister of Energy. In addition, the board included one of the most prominent business leaders in Hong Kong, the co-founder and former president of Gulf and Western, two sitting CEOs of large US companies. I haven't finished the credentials of the people as yet. One of them was former head of the Commodities Future Trading Corporation, who was an Asian woman with an economics PhD, and married to a prominent Republican congressman. There was also the former professor of economics and a former head of General Electric's power division worldwide, a senior executive of an investment fund with PhD in mathematics. The former president of Houston Natural Gas, the former head of MD Anderson, the former head of a major energy and petroleum company, and a former deputy secretary of the Treasury of the US, and also a PhD in economics. So this shows that it is easy to achieve the letter of good corporate governance without achieving the spirit of the reality. Now this company collapsed. And if you see the way the shares went to almost $2, the share which about 500 something came up to about $2. And the investors lost their money. And the whole of the world economy came tumbling down. I think you heard about the walls of Jericho, isn't it? What happened to the walls of Jericho? It came tumbling down. That was exactly what happened to the rest of the world because of mismanagement of corporations. And so the question to ask is, what do we actually even mean when we say corporate governance? What does it actually mean? I think the most important reason these scandals become the most widely reported was the story of the year. That was the year 2002, when one company after the other collapsed. And the United States government was compelled to pass what is called the Sarbanes-Oxley Act to try and regulate corporate governance. And so, as you see, in Ghana here, we have taken the steps, at least institutionally, to lay down rules which are expected to govern corporate governance. The government itself, through the civil service, enacted a code, and it is specifically we're talking about corporate governance. The Security and Exchange Commission also enacted a code also on corporate governance. The Bank of Ghana has enacted a code on corporate governance. And all of them are, as I studied them, very elaborate, laying down who can be a director of a company, the qualifications of a director, who can be a manager, who can be a chief executive officer of a corporation. All have been elaborately laid down. I will not go into the details because, as I said, the time we have for a lecture is limited. And so, that is just by the way. But what I'm trying to point out to you is that it is because of the feelings of the human being. When we get power, when there is money shining like gold. And I tell you, the women know more about gold than the men. Because you have eye to attract beautiful things. One of my jokes was that take your wife to the jewelry shop and pretend to be looking around, and you see when you turn by, you see her eye will be concentrating on something so beautiful. And then she will turn, not away though, she will turn and look at you. And the eye is saying something. If you truly love me, you buy that for me. That is the attraction of gold. Is that not correct? Unfortunately, this is what we human beings are. When there's money somewhere, we get so attracted that nothing else matters but to aim at it. But the story of Aaron is very interesting. And of course, I have a whole series of examples to give. Where so many companies, one after the other, collapse. Because here is the man who said those beautiful words that I had just read to you. And what happened? You give lavish entertainment to the directors, send them on vacations, paid for by the company, of course. Fantastic allowances. And in these days in Ghana, I think when there is a change of government, you know what happens. Everybody who is connected with the party is lobbying for what? to be made a director or a board member because there will be allowances coming. And so maybe that was one of the reasons why the civil service itself, or the public service, laid down this code because of the danger which has engulfed so many institutions, where sometimes at the end of the month, the payment of salaries is no longer there because the funds have gone elsewhere. There is no proper monitoring. That is the most important issue. So we are here faced with a dilemma. How can we ensure that our institutions function and function effectively? Now, the Bank of Ghana laid down this code in 2018. But Jemima, correct me if I'm wrong, these banks collapsed after that. The banks that collapsed, it was after that. Even those codes were made by the Bank of Ghana, and yet the banks collapsed. Where bank CEO was lending money to himself or lending money to the bank chairman. Money which belongs to the bank. And mind you, even if you are a large shareholder in the bank, the monies in the bank are not part of your shares. In any event, so far as banks are concerned, the money in the bank belongs to the depositors, who are not even shareholders, who had trust in the system, and therefore they put their savings there. And at that time, if some of you may have not been aware, many of them were offering interest almost double that of what the government is offering. And of course, people get excited. Well, if you calculate, you ask yourself, what kind of business can they put the money into to be able to generate that kind of interest and pay the depositor and then be able to survive? Of course, it is not possible. So, something went wrong, and which just confirmed what I'm saying, to say that you can have elaborate rules in place, but their enforcement becomes the issue. Mrs. Oware will come and speak to you, but she also has a problem because she's supposed to have inspectors. Am I mistaken?
I'm supposed to have
Inspectors.
yes, company inspector.
They're supposed to have company inspectors. So if the company inspectors are doing their work well, what do you think will happen? It will mean that at least people have been expected to do what is right. The Bank of Ghana is supposed to have officials who are monitoring each of the banks in the country. Because according to the code, you cannot be appointed a CEO of a bank or even a deputy CEO of a bank unless the Bank of Ghana approves those individuals. Even those in special managerial positions must be approved by the Bank of Ghana before. You read my CV, but you didn't tell that I was a member of the Bank of Ghana board. I was there for 3 terms. And one of the issues I used to raise at that time continuously was, are your bank inspectorate working effectively? Have you employed people with adequate knowledge who can detect what is going wrong in the system? do they receive Christmas hampers? It looks like Christmas hamper is meant to be an innocent thing, isn't it? At Christmas time, somebody gives you a gift. No, it's not. There's much more to it than that. Sometimes the hamper is not just what you are seeing there. There's an envelope inside it. Which means that people who were commissioned by the institution to check the misbehavior, the mismanagement of the institution were not doing their work or doing it well. Because they were doing it well, the scandals may never have occurred. And this issue is important for all of us here because, as I said, even if you are not buying treasury bills, you may think that you are safe. But what is the exchange rate now of the CD to the dollar? Who knows?
11 point something.
11 point something? Okay. But some time ago, it had run to over 20 something.
Yes.
How did he get there, to that position? Which means that what you were buying before, and I can recollect that when I was in the bank, when we did the demonetization, I was there when we did that. We made sure that the CD was equivalent to $1. Indeed, when we did the demonetization, the CD was stronger than the US dollar. So what has happened? By the time we did the demonetization, we had to remove 4 zeros. And it is system of this nature that create that kind of problem, which means that you, the salary you are getting, cannot meet your monthly bill. When I get my electricity bill, I ask myself, I say, how are people surviving? Because what I'm paying is more than someone's salary at the end of the month. And all these are the causes where the concept of corporate governance becomes very, very important. What do we do then? Or what can we do? First of all, we also need to educate ourselves. That's very important. But we also need to educate those in the media. I had problem at times with the media because sometimes they're asking me questions which I thought that they should know the answer. And I said, you know, journalism has taken a different level now. That we need specialists in the reporting system. So if there should be financial problem, there should be a financial analyst who is a journalist, who can be able to analyze the matter, not the sensation which we keep seeing all the time now. The things are hyped, and many of them, of course, are full of falsehood. They are not even true. So if the person is reporting on legal matter, he must have a legal background. Because he goes to court, where are you? He did not understand them. So he gives a reportage of what transpired in the court, and you find out that it has nothing to do with what was said by the judge. And so the court is brought into disrepute by virtue of someone's lack of knowledge. And I say that for lack of knowledge, the people do what? They perish. And knowledge is not only for the specialists, even we must be discerning what we read. We must question it. So our nation is in trouble. Because as I said, when I read all these corporate governance this speech has given, they were beautiful, but they arose because of what happened in 2002. That's why all of them have brought up that. But the question is that, what about the monitoring to ensure that those rules are adhered to, they are complied with, and that people are not lobbying to get into position without proper checks on their background? When I read what the civil service has produced, the public service, let me always correct that, it's public service, not civil service, public service has produced. They talk about appointment to the boards, the checks that must take place. Then I realized that something is missing somewhere. Because as you know, I'm serving on the Council of State. And appointments to the government corporations and the rest are supposed to be done by the President on the advice of the Council of State. But if you sit at the Council of State and they bring you a list of names with CVs attached, does the CV speak a language? I can tell you CV does not speak a language. Because I have scrutinized some of them where the person says, they say Dr. So and so and so. But you find out that he's actually now working on a PhD, he hasn't got it. And yet it's indicated that he's doctor. People have put down false degrees, which they never had. And yet they put it on paper. I am not CID. What means do I have to cross-check on those information to find out whether they are correct or not? But if we are given an opportunity to interview the people, it's a different ball game altogether. Because I would have asked you, which school were you, what year were you in this school? Name some of your classmates. And I can tell you, people didn't go to certain secondary school, but they've given it as part of their CV. People have indicated that they were in university, and some people even found that they were there. But you know what happened? He was on the campus all right. They were loitering in the campus. So people see them and they assume that they were actually students in the university, but they weren't. And this will give a degree that they have. I know I've investigated this, so I know what I'm talking about. So I'm just saying that we should be on our guard as to who we entrust responsibility to. The banks are important. I did not even mention Security and Exchange Commission. SEC has very elaborate rules on corporate governance. They are more important because it is there that people invest their money. So the question, of course, would be, do they have the monitoring process in place where they can be able to, if I'm going too long, you can stop me, where you can be sure that those who are managing your investments, because nobody can exist this day without an investment. Nobody can. The salary you earn, if you put it just in your bank account and you spend it, that will be the end. So I think the issue is simply that we have to be careful as to what we do. So I don't know where you are now. I hope they are significant. So, all right. We'll take it there. So the significance of the corporate governance is that it helps to meet the stakeholders' expectations. That the shareholders get maximum dividend because they put the money there exactly for that purpose. that the directors see smooth and efficient running of the company. Smooth and efficient, that's the underlying word, efficient running of the company. That cause employees are tempted to do tricks and manipulations. So the service of the employees are met and improved upon. I think normally I like to make reference to Singapore. I think you've all heard about Singapore. Now when you go there, it's the cleanest city in the world. It's a city-state. That means it's a small island. That's all. It has one of the highest standards of living in the world. It has one of the highest education levels in the world. But you know how it came about? I recollect that when I was on the board of the International Bar Association, we were due to hold our annual conference, which we choose around the globe. So this time we had chosen Singapore. And my colleagues, some of my colleagues said, the man is a dictator. When we go there, it means we are giving our stamp of approval, because we are a human rights institution. Approval to his behavior. Then, as part of my usual madness, I said, well, let's go and see. Perhaps our presence there might help him to moderate. So we went. And then part of the program was that an evening with Lee Kuan Yew. So we went to this big hall, and then we saw a gentleman who walked in white shirt and white trousers. I knew him, so I recognized him, but my colleagues didn't realize that he was the one. So he went and sat down, and then the president of the association came. He was introduced. And he told us how was in Cambridge, and he was the most outstanding student. Brilliant. He came back and he said, if I can beat these 5 people in the classroom, I didn't see the reason why in my own country we cannot beat them. So he started and said, education. It's very important. What do? We make sure that everybody goes to school. Maths and English are compulsory. The island is composed of people who are Malays from Malaysia, who are Chinese from China, who are Indians from India. And then there is a 4th category which is called Eurasia. That means people of mixed blood. And they are always fighting. So he says, okay, now, if you fight and you are caught, straight to prison. The Chinese, they spit anywhere. So we say, okay, no spitting. If you spit, you are going to be caned. No import of chewing gum. You want accommodation, right? Okay, now we'll make sure that everybody, you want accommodation, give you 1 room, right? If you're married, you can have 2 rooms. If you have a large family, maybe 3 rooms. Peace and tranquility in the country. So now you begin to see then that it is how you manage the system that it works. And so when you manage your company properly, you will find that there is increased performance of your employees. And there's also ensuring that there is compliance with the law. Because as I said, you can have all these elaborate rules put down in place, but if you don't have compliance, then it does not achieve the purpose of what it is. So as I said earlier on that in 2002, many corporate meltdowns occurred. There was loss of jobs, financial and accounting crimes, overestimated of profits, a great number of economic scandals were unearthed. 7 out of the 12 largest bankruptcies in America were filed in 2002. Major companies such as Enron, Wellcome, Tyco, Adelphia, all of them went down. The world economy, and I'm saying that not America alone, the world economy crashed. And so there needs to be a strong system to monitor checks and balances in the corporate world and enforce compliance with corporate laws. So the largest lesson the world looked from this was a strong awareness of the importance of corporate governance. Normally when we talk about checks and balances, it's only the lawyers who are interested in, in political science, in politics, who understand what it talks about. Sometimes when we say that the Constitution has given too much power to one person, that it is not healthy, and that there must always be checks and balances. And so you have a vice chancellor, right? Is that not correct? But you have a board. Is that not correct also? One of them is sitting next to you. And they are supposed to do what? Keep the vice chancellor in check so that he does not exceed his power. If he thinks that some professor need not be promoted, or someone need not be promoted a professor because he has a particular hatred against him, the board will say, no, from this person's performance, we think that he's the right person for the job. And they will override him. So these are what we call the checks and the balances. Sometimes I tell people that if I were to be a very rich person and I form a company, I will not be the chairman. I will appoint someone else to be the chairman. They ask me why. I say because it's a protection. Somebody come to me and say, Chairman, can you lend me so and so? I say, sorry, I have to take it to the board. So I am protected. These are part of the checks and the balances that I am always enthused about. All of us need that kind of protection. Someone who can say, hey, what you want to do is not correct. Don't do it that way. Or why don't you seek advice? Let's get an expert to advise you so that you can do it at all. So the fall of Wall Street was the beginning of all this confusion that arose. So Enron was an energy trading company, an utility company formed in 1985. The shares boomed as high as $90.75 during the peak season. Due to high competition in the energy trading business, the profits reduced. The company executives rolled out fraudulent accounting practices to initiate their revenue. Enron's board of directors compromised the outsiders with significant ownership stakes and a tainted audit committee. In 2000, the chief executive included Enron as one of the best 5 boards. I just read you what he said. In November 2001, Enron's stock fell. Their stock decreased to $0.12. It was worth 12 cents. From $90 to 12 cents. The directors, including Andrew Farrow and his wife, were charged with 98 counts of fraud, money laundering, insider trading, and conspiracy, among others. That's only one company. You can come to Esteban Kodak. I think many of you are too young to know about Kodak. At one time, that was the only camera in the world. Kodak camera was the camera in the world. Have you ever seen it? None of you have, yes. When we were in school, we used to have Kodak camera. So we take pictures. So that also went down. Then the BP oil spill in 2010. Just a small error in the Gulf of Mexico. I think they are still paying. They are still paying for the oil spills. And again, heads roll. In Ghana, we had an airline called Ghana Airways, the pride of Africa. Efficient pilots, air stewardesses, well-dressed. The Africans everywhere were proud that at least an African country can also run an airline. Where is it now? It's gone down. Why? Ministers, political cronies were flying with their families on holiday, on vacation. Traders will go to Italy or New York and load their baggage onto the plane, put something in the pocket of the people on the plane, and they come without paying anything. It collapsed. And so this becomes a real important issue. So my suggestion, of course, is the chairman and CEO conflict, which apparently is now considered carefully now in the various codes that I was making reference to earlier on. You see, the danger is that the chief executive officer can mislead the board members very easily. Because if he provides you with false data and information, how will you know? And in any case, how many people sitting on the board know how to read a balance sheet? And again, you find out that the company secretary who is supposed to counsel the board chairman in the deliberations, we think that is a recorder. And when you try to explain to people that the board secretary keeps records, but is not a recorder, he could easily have gone there with a subordinate who will take the minutes. He will eventually review it and ensure that it is correct. But he's much more than that. I trained as a company secretary before I became a lawyer. In fact, the law was only an addition. And when I tell people that it takes 5 years for a person to be trained as a company secretary, that he has to study economics, he has to study law, he has to study accounting. In fact, the secretary and the accountants, they sit in the same classroom to study accounting. He has to study company administration. That is not a thing for a recorder. And so it's a very high official because he's there to do what? To assist the chairman, not the chief executive, the chairman, how to conduct the meeting. Normally he will not speak, but he will speak to the chair. Say, Chairman, that this one, no. Let's take this one first. Let's call this one and then the other one. This matter requires legal advice. Can we call our company lawyer so that he can come and explain this to the members of the board? How will he know that if he does not understand law? So, I'm just giving you a little bit of the nitty-gritty of what it's all about. And so, what is required is fairness. There is transparency. There is responsibility. There is important question of disclosure, and more so accountability. The board is accountable to who? The shareholders or the owners of the company. It's not yours. We used to use a word we call ubarima fidei. That is utmost good faith. Utmost good faith is required. And there are legal responsibilities. And therefore, the board members can go to jail very easily. I don't know, Mr. Oware, how many of them have been prosecuted?
Not yet.
Oh, you should start doing that. You should start doing that. When we send 2 or 3 of them to jail and it's publicized, the rest will sit up and begin to appreciate that they can't be taking people for a ride or mess up people's life. Do you know that some people committed suicide? Yeah, a lot of people committed suicide when these bank things went down. They lost everything they had. They don't publicize them, so we don't know. So we need a legal and regulatory framework, and that's what I have referred to enable the institutions to function and function effectively for the interest of the people. So corporate governance is a subject which is worth all of us to study and understand. And perhaps Mr. Doe will have to put a whole program for this purpose so that we take it. Because when you actually see the case studies on the subject, to see how many companies collapsed and the reasons for their collapse, they are not all the same. But you find out that there are certain things which were similar. Lavish lifestyle. Somebody was bought a shower curtain for so many thousands of dollars, and the board approved it. Vacations, holidays. Now if you take them to Dubai, they say, I and my family are going to Dubai. Who is paying for it? The company. And you don't debit it to the account, they think it's a simple accounting problem. But you see, in Aaron, one of the largest important audit firms collapsed. Because in auditing, what we realize is that your account clerk, your account clerk or account manager, whatever title you give to him, he works with the auditors. And the auditors, they send an audit clerk. The audit is not being done by the auditors. It is by the audit clerk. And so when they go there, and then this person gives them some package, they approve. And so you find out that we are reading balance sheets, which are complete forgery. They are not real, because the checks and the balances are not put in place. So I like to talk, and I talk too much. So you pardon me for it. So that's just a little bit of the piece on corporate governance that I wanted to show you. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Oh boy, this felt like I didn't want it to end. Did you feel the same? Then let's do it again for him. Let's appreciate it. When someone has the wealth of knowledge, coolly and calmly, but I knew the message was driven in. My take on the subject that we seem to have all the rules, the codes of ethics existing, but compliance, monitoring, having the right people, checks and balances. I think if you take nothing at all from here, that you should remember. And I believe if we do that, we will have companies with the soil that will sustain this economy. Thank you very much, Mr. Okudzeto. Thank you. I would like at this point to introduce our next speaker, a professional that I love very much, Mrs. Jemima Oware is a career public servant and the current Registrar of Companies for the newly established Office of the Registrar of Companies, hived out of the Registrar General's Department.
After that brilliant presentation, I learned so much. Please let's give him a hand one more time. I learned so much. My presentation is really just going to be more on the Companies Act, because he's given us a broad discussion on what corporate governance is all about. So I'm going to skew in on the makeup of companies, and those are the things we regulate right now, so that we can see whether Ghana is going to get far with all these lovely legislation and codes and all that. But one point he made is, if you don't enforce it, there is no point in having all these rules and nice things in place. The office was set up by the Companies Act, and it was actually gazetted in 2019, but the board was sworn in March of 2022, and we operationalized it by a big launch in July of 2022. So we really just started working, even though it came into effect in 2019. And the whole idea was, Professor Gawa, as far back as 1963, thought there should be such an office. But at that time, there weren't many companies that had been set up. And so the Registrar General was sort of mandated to oversee from companies to administration of estates, to marriages, to industrial property rights. I mean, the whole works. And so when the committee of experts came to repealing that particular legislation, they thought that it is time now to hive out and have an office that is dedicated solely to businesses. That's how come we came up. Okay. So the Registrar General still exists. And in this act, the Companies Act, it said the Registrar General cannot also be the Registrar of Companies. You have to have two separate people doing those particular functions. So I'm no more the Registrar General. And there's a new Registrar General in the person of Mrs. Grace Isahak. So she's overseeing industrial property rights registration, marriages, and estates. So that department is still there. And then we are overseeing registration and regulation of all types of businesses. We are continuing what we used to do in the Registrar General. So I'm talking of companies, business names, partnerships, and professional bodies. We are also appointing inspectors, receivers, or managers to ensure compliance with Act 992. We said already, we act as the official liquidator through the Corporate Insolvency Restructuring Act. And now we've brought in a rescue culture. In fact, if the SIRA had been there before the banks went down and the fund management companies went down, many of those institutions, I'm sure, would have been rescued, instead of we trying to, just kill them outright. It's a big problem up till now. All those banks have went down, and then the fund management companies. I am still handling 47 fund management companies that were liquidated, and it's not easy. It's not easy because lots of people have lost their jobs, and investors have also lost their funds. And so this new culture we brought in through the SIRA is a very important introduction. Now, apart from that, we now have financial autonomy, which makes life a bit easy. In the past, we were just given a percentage of the revenue we generate, but because of this act, we are now able to retain all our IGF to carry out all our programs. And so there's a lot to be done. We have a governing board, 11-member board, headed by Mr. Setasanti or Benti H. Lecha and Ankuma, and we have members of the board being appointed by the president. So the member of the ORC board has the same fiduciary relationship with the ORC, that's the duty to act with loyalty and be in good faith as a director of any company. And then the board is there to ensure that we properly perform the functions of the ORC. So now, what is corporate governance? Mr. Okudzeto have talked about it already, but basically it's systems of rules, practices, laws, processes, which a company is directed, operated, regulated, and controlled. Now, if all these systems of rules, practices, laws are not enforced, it's just a big joke. You know, that he made it very clear. So we have to be sure that whatever we put down, we practice it. So simply, corporate governance refers to the way in which companies are governed. And through this structure, we are able to identify who has power and the accountability in the organization and who makes the decisions. So we ensure through corporate governance, we ensure that businesses have an appropriate decision-making process and controls in place. And he also made that point. Through that process, all stakeholders are properly catered for. We are talking in this case of shareholders, employees, suppliers, management, government regulators, we also come in. Customers and the general community. So it's all balanced. It's all balanced. The principles of corporate governance, for now, I just took out 4. There are more, but I'm just going to emphasize on 4. The first one is accountability. In this world, if you can't be accountable, then you are no goner. In the walk with God, we are all going to account one day for whatever God has put in our hands. So it's a very basic principle that we should have in corporate. Every leader in any company should know that you are responsible for your actions and you have to give a satisfactory reason for whatever you've done. Fairness, we have to make sure in our corporate bodies we are impartial and treat everybody fairly. There should be no favoritism or discrimination in the corporate governance area. It's a new thing, it's novel. And at that time, we were just amending the Companies Act when the Financial Action Task Force, that is a big firm, came informed as a Ghana official ownership provisions. But it wasn't broad enough, and we're still not in compliance. So in Act 992, we deepened it and made sure that it is there. So now every company, you need to disclose. We are keeping a separate register. It's part of our database, but it's a different module. So in there we have the beneficial owners of the company. And this is who a beneficial owner is. It's an individual. Please realize that it's an individual. It's not a company. Or a natural person who directly or indirectly ultimately owns or exercises substantial control over a person or a company. What scenario would this be? So you have somebody who is at the back end. His name is possibly not even in the company register, but he's the main person that is directing and controlling the affairs of the company. Or you have somebody who has substantial economic interest or receives substantial economic benefits. This person too could either be a legal owner or somebody whose name is not in the register. But when it gets to dividends, that person receives the dividend. I'll give you one example. There was one first lady who got this kind of arrangement in place and had a nominee shareholder. Meanwhile, she was a politically exposed person and she was a real shareholder. And the guy tricked her in the end. When she came out of her, the guy said, I'm the shareholder. I won't give you anything. So it's this one, if they had disclosed, then she would be the one to benefit. So it's more of transparency, you know. You conduct transactions on somebody's behalf, or you exercise significant control or influence. You have to disclose who these people are. So as I said, BOs can nominate persons to hold their shares on their behalf under a nominee shareholder arrangement. And through this disclosure of politically exposed persons, it reduces the high risk of political meddling in business transactions or contracts or award processes. Because of this disclosure now, especially in the oil and gas industry, you won't have one company owning the whole chain. That is, if you truthfully disclose. Many of them still don't disclose. I'm telling the honest truth. With all these provisions, until we get one scapegoat, then they will know that the law's fight. But it's normally for incorporation of companies, when you are starting, when you are filing returns, or there's amendment, you inform us about it. By revealing who the ultimate owner is behind a legal entity, it becomes more difficult for criminals to hide their illicit funds or disguise their activities. So BOs is expected to enhance transparency and make it easier for us to identify who we are really doing business with in a company, and should reduce the risk of corruption, conflict of interest, and fraudulent activities. Now, shareholders would love to know this. Investors and other stakeholders, they can make informed decisions on who really is accountable and who has control over a company. Now, this is the section, if you fail to provide this BO to us, the same thing, you commit an offense, you're liable on summary conviction to a fine of not less than 50 penalty units and not more than 250 penalty units, or a term of imprisonment of not less than 1 year and not more than 2 years, or both. We'll kickstart it and see how it goes. Then maybe they'll be truthful to us. These are some of the novel provisions in the Companies Act. First is the establishment of office, and then transparency and interest disclosures, the beneficial ownership one. Now we have to file the reports according to the International Financial Reporting Standards that has been adopted by the Institute of Chartered Accountants. The major transactions is one, derivative actions is one, buyout for dissenting shareholders, registration, communication, and service by electronic or digital means, companies bulletin, and let me say this, now we publish all our notices in our own company's bulletin. So you can all come to our office and pay and get a hard copy and electronic copy of notices that we put out in this bulletin. We are not going anymore to Ghana publishing. Our own office comes out with its own bulletin, and we have enhanced sanctions. So in conclusion, my little presentation is that the effect of a good corporate governance practices is it ensures a company's integrity, overall direction, risk management, and success planning. And it helps companies stay financially viable. Whilst a company, if all the companies in Ghana were viable, then we're going to have a strong community, and shareholder and investor relations and trust. And it will bring in investments. Our country is not going to be where it is today, that we are struggling to keep the city up. If we have strong companies that are run properly, and of course it will promote economic growth, and it will promote corporate financial transparency and accountability, and safeguards for the financial stability of Ghana. I want to thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Oware. Now, as good students and as good participants, I believe we listened, but we must have questions. So we'll dedicate a few minutes to questions, and our distinguished speakers will take time to answer your questions.
I see that you are very committees. The most important ones are audit, risk, remuneration, and obligation. You talk about monitoring. Why would we advocate for a monitoring committee? And a little bit of clarity. Out of Ghana, Is it core, do they have a core or principles and guidelines? Because that's what I think. I don't think they have a code. I think they have principles and guidelines. That's my submission. Thank you.
All of the state-owned enterprises who are making losses and still taking their allowances and things like that. What is the way forward with that? Because that is part of the problem. Thank you very much.
The state institutions themselves have now laid down corporate governance guidelines. And in all these, everything is spelled out. Who should hold position, their qualifications, and the monitoring process is all laid down now in the rule. The question, of course, is always the implementation. There's the fact that the audit system is as such that it is the parliament to which the Auditor General presents his report. And if you check in it, you find out that that document is almost 2 years late. So oftentimes you find that the harm has already been done. How we can correct that, that should be something that we should all think about. Because if the thing is 2 years late and Parliament is now looking at it, the harm already has been caused. Some people who want to steal would have stolen, they would have already run away from the country with the money, and they're hiding somewhere. Now you see that the parliamentary committee invites the people against whom an alpha report has been made to appear before them. Now if the person is not in the country, how does the person appear? Or maybe he's no longer even working with the company or on the board. So it's a confused situation we have to look at. Also, how we can ensure that whether in fact the parliamentary committee itself, because what they're doing, they're doing about malfeasance, which come before them. That does not show us the healthy situation of the company at the time. Because I said, this is 2 years too late. What are you correcting now? Sometimes you're only calling people and you say that, okay, so how much money adverse fund you've made against you, so go back and pay it. Now, I don't know how much they follow it. I had the privilege of being chairman of the committee as far back as '69. And I have had situations like that where people come before me and the auditors assume that you are only an MP. And in my case, they thought I was a lawyer. And so they come trying to dribble me. And I had to stop him and tell him that I know as much about account as he does. And so he should answer the issue that is put before him and give me the proper answer. So we have a problem. The question then comes to the question of the media, as I was saying earlier on. It's so that if you have a well-enlightened media with expertise, they then will follow up that story, dig it up, and expose the malfeasance which continues to happen in those institutions. And sometimes even compel the institution to be dissolved. Or as now we have authority now, as any citizen can actually take government to court. So you can actually even make an application to the court, or an application to the Registrar General to say that you think that that company should be wound up because it is not behaving properly. But you have to make sure you gather your facts properly. Otherwise, it will be dismissed and then you are disgraced. So that's my view.
Thank you. Mine is not a question, maybe an observation. I don't know what you call it, contribution maybe. So in times, Lillian. In times past, you realized that I think the consensus was that most of the people who were on boards were not qualified, they didn't have the right background and all that. And then later you realize that you have very qualified people. So in the case of Enron, you had academics, you had professionals, I mean you had the creme de la creme. However, you still had corporate governance issues. So I think that it comes down to fundamentally, as human beings, as individuals, what your moral and ethical inclination is. Because at the end of the day, it's individuals who assemble to become the board, a group of people. And so if you believe in something that is right, it doesn't matter what the books, what the document says, do this, do that. You know what is right and what is wrong, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. And when you believe in that and you project that on other people, I think that you just get the best of results. You have people who have exited boards, resigned from their positions because they didn't agree with a decision, no matter how trivial it may sound. So I think that at the end of the day, and I'm happy because there are a lot of students here, you face the ethical dilemma when you get into the corporate world. It's real, but you must have a certain ground, a certain standing, certain principles to be able to decide that, or take a stand, basically. So I think that, yes, it's important we have all these Oxley Acts and all the code of ethics and code of conduct and all that. But it comes down to you as an individual, what you believe in. That's just my contribution. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to ask a question about you talking about corruption. And then there's a saying that until you are caught, you are not guilty. And then I want to ask, can the media be a big body which can eliminate corruption in our economy?
This was not answered. And then there's this notion that corporate governance is for the private sector and not really for public sector workers. And then the last one, being charged can disqualify you from being a director. I find that a bit difficult to accept in the sense that there's a case that Uncle Sam worked on, the Stadium Probe Committee. 6 of the police officers were acquitted and discharged by the court. How do you then say any of those police officers acquitted by the court and also discharged cannot serve as a director anywhere?
So clearly, before you are appointed, if you have that charge, we will not put you on as a director. But when you are disqualified, you can always be a director. You can show that you've been discharged, so then you can be a director. You say you didn't answer his question.
The point about disclosure, fairness, and accountability.
Yes. No, I think let's not confuse ourselves. The question is that the disclosure is an internal matter. It's an internal matter. We are not talking about you to tell somebody else outside that this person has done this, has done that. That's that one. Your oath of secrecy will be breached. But so far as the internal situation is concerned, the company, the board has the right to take decisions based upon the fact which are present. In fact, if it's even an allegation against a director, one of the directors, they have a director committee that will sit on him, but give him the opportunity to explain himself. And if they are not satisfied, they have a right to have him removed from the board. So all these are part of the rules. Okay? And the young lady was telling us about integrity. Now, I think part of the problem is that we think that education is going to learn rules and write them in an exam. And I say that's not education. Education is much more than that. So the concept of integrity is something we should inculcate to children from childhood. If you punish your child for taking that which does not belong to him or her, next time she'll be afraid to do it. Because the time she's picking it up, it doesn't dawn to her that you don't take something which is not yours. But when you explain to her that you don't do that, if you want something, you do what? You ask. And when you ask and the person is prepared, you will do what? He will give it to you. But I think the misfortune, as I have seen, is that we think that education is going to school and learning rules and pass an exam. I can assure you that people will come and get first-class degree in the university, but they will be the worst person to employ in an institution. Absolutely. Because they have no morals. They have no morals. You see that now we are laying the rules on sexual sexual rules in the companies. Are you aware? Not only in company, in every institution. Because there are people who think that I am the boss, I can sleep with any girl. And when the girl refuses to sleep with you, she becomes the enemy. You will worry her, you will mess her life up, you will even concoct stories against her. But now there are strict rules now on sexual harassment. And it's being enforced now. If it's a government institution, the rules are there. In fact, on the code that I'm talking about right now, it is there inside it. Sexual harassment is part of the code of ethics, which is governing the corporate governance institution. So, morals is important. And you who are the teachers here, I'm bringing you to your notice to say that I said, I teach ethics. And I tell my students, I said, the rules I'm giving you, it is not for exams. I will examine you on it. But the rules are not only for exams. It is for your own conduct throughout your life. Because when you breach it, I serve on the disciplinary committee. I said, we'll have your name struck off the road, and you will cease to be a lawyer, if you want that. So, I'm just bringing this to say that moral rules is something that we as families should bring up our own children, you understand? We inculcate these rules in them. And when they come to school, we should ensure that it is so. Not that the person goes to steal something and copy it for an examination. And then, when it is found out, they send people to come and beg. Dean, this is my only child. If you need it, you ruin his life or her life. So please. Is that not what they do? Yeah. So I think all of us have to make sure, because if a person like that comes and is running a company, what do you think he will do? If the person has no morals, what will he do? He will think that I'm clever enough, I can be able to manipulate. People go to the police, and some police people will collect money from them, and sometimes rather charge the complainant, knowing very well that when they go, eventually the complainant will be discharged. But then the person against whom the complaint is made gets away with it. Or they will even charge that person, and then extort money from him or her, so as to drop the matter. And you realize that to go and hire a lawyer to be going to court, going to court, and it's so expensive. So you might as well do what? Pay and then forget about it. So these are some of the serious moral issues that is facing us as a nation. That's why I was citing the example of Singapore. To say that if Singapore can do it, and can you believe that in Africa, Kagame, in Rwanda, he's applying the same principle. People said he was a dictator, he was wicked. But he's applying the same rules. And that country now is higher on the ladder. Thank you.